Hi, and welcome back to 10-Minute Bible. This will be number 11 in the series as we work our way through the book of Luke. Luke, one of the four writers who wrote up a life of Jesus. My name is Michael Venema. Thanks so much for joining in, and again, welcome. Now, where we left things off as we finished up chapter 5, at the end of that chapter, Jesus ends up saying that there's something so great and new here that God is doing that some of the old ways are not going to be able to contain it. And we're going to see that theme played out clearly in chapter 6 in what we're going to look at in this video. So I'm going to read a few lines and then make some comments. And again, I use a version of the Bible called The Message for these videos. The Message, a version put together by a New Testament scholar named Eugene Peterson, and I think he does a terrific job of capturing the dynamics and the liveliness. Maybe that's not the best word, but the liveliness of Jesus and the work and the impression that he made on people. So, a few lines and a few comments. On a certain Sabbath, so this is Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath. On a certain Sabbath, Jesus was walking through a field of ripe grain, and his disciples were pulling off heads of grain, rubbing them in their hands to get rid of the chaff, and eating the grain. So getting rid of the outer layer of the grain so they can get at the edible part, and eating the edible grains. And some of the Pharisees, so very conservative teachers of the Jewish laws, the Jewish faith, they said, not in a friendly way, I'm sure, "Why are you doing that, breaking a Sabbath rule?" So here's some of the old ways are coming to the surface. So the Sabbath rule that the disciples were breaking was the rule that God's people were not to do any work on the Sabbath, on the Saturday, the special day set aside for rest and for worship. And this rule is given in Exodus 34. It says that even during plowing or harvesting, if there's a Sabbath during plowing or harvesting, even though you really want to get out of the fields to do that work, you must rest on that Sabbath day. So obviously the disciples are not plowing and they're not engaged in commercial harvesting, but they are, taking a few fingers full or hands full of grain and rubbing it and then eating the grain. So you can see that these Pharisees are interpreting this rule very, very strictly. Now, Jesus has a response, and he goes back to a story in the Old Testament, the pre-Jesus parts of the Bible, and you find this story in part of the Old Testament called 1 Samuel chapter 27. When I mentioned Exodus 34 a minute ago, Exodus is also part of the Old Testament. So in Samuel chapter 27, King David is leading a raiding party, and he and his party are hungry. They stop in to see one of the priests, hoping to get some help from him. He hasn't got any food, but he does have some bread that's been set aside, consecrated, blessed, so to speak, so that it is special and only the priests may eat it. But the priest makes an exception, and he says, "David, you and your men can have this bread." So there was kind of a violating of a very strict observance of that rule that only that bread was to be eaten only by priests. And so Jesus brings up this story. So you can see that he's bringing up this story as a way of saying to the Pharisees, look, sometimes these rules are not applied as rigorously as they could be. And then Jesus goes on and he says, "The Son of Man is no slave to the Sabbath, but he's in charge. Now, we should think about this expression, Son of Man, because this is Jesus's, I think it's his favorite way of referring to himself. I think it shows up a number of times in the other versions of Jesus' life as well. He refers to himself, he uses the third person. He doesn't say, I am the Son of Man, but this is the sense of what he's saying. The Son of Man is no slave to the Sabbath. So in other words, the Son of Man, Jesus is saying, I am not a slave to these strict rules that you have in place concerning the Sabbath. So that's one thing that's going on. So you could there's a lot of things to unpack here, and I've started to do some of these things. So the old is not able to contain the new any longer, and that Jesus, as the Son of Man, is elevating himself. Now, I want to think about, as I said, I want to think about that expression, Son of Man, for a moment, because sometimes people say, well, that's Jesus saying that he is the son of a human, which, of course, he was the son born to Mary. But in fact, this expression, Son of Man, goes back to another Old Testament, pre-Jesus part of the Bible, this time from the book of Daniel. And in the book of Daniel, Daniel has a vision, a number of them, I think, and in one of them he sees someone who looked like, and the expression is, a son of man, and the Son of Man goes up to God's throne, and the Son of Man is given all authority over all things and all peoples of the earth. So when Jesus uses this expression, Son of Man, in a kind of indirect way, a third-person way, but clearly parking himself under that title, he is beginning to reveal to his listeners that he is the one referred to in Daniel, the one to whom God will give great authority. So it doesn't say here that this expression caught the Pharisees off guard and that they started talking about it, thinking about it. What is it Jesus saying about himself? Is he saying he's the Son of Man? It doesn't say that they were taken aback by this, but I'm thinking that likely they were. So there are many, of course, details in the story that Luke tells us that are left out, and maybe that's one of them. And that'll make a bit of sense when we get to a bit further along in the story. Anyway, so that happened on one particular Sabbath, Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath. On another Sabbath, we read, and I'm continuing to read here, Jesus went to the meeting place, so this would be, I think, the synagogue, and he taught. So Jesus was becoming known as a Jewish rabbi, a Jewish teacher, respected. And anyway, there was a man there with a crippled right hand, and the religion scholars and the Pharisees had their eyes on Jesus to see if he would heal the man, hoping to catch him again in some Sabbath infraction, as this version reads. Jesus knew what they were up to, and he spoke to the man with the crippled hand and said, "Get up and stand up before us." And so this man with the withered hand, and some of the translations I think it says, but the hand that wasn't working, and Jesus says to these conservative, rigorous teachers, he says, "Let me ask you something. What kind of action suits Sabbath best? It's God's special day, so to speak. Doing good or doing evil? Helping people or leaving them helpless?" Well, it's one of those questions which you kind of know what the answer should be, but maybe the Pharisees aren't going to voice it because they also sense what's coming, because Jesus has been healing people already. So Jesus looked around, he looked each one in the eye, and then he says to the man, "Hold out your hand." And he held it out, and it was as good as new. So the infraction that the Pharisees were hoping to catch Jesus in was the infraction of Jesus doing some work. And of course, it could be, what Jesus did in healing could be interpreted as working on the Sabbath when he was supposed to be resting. And this is how the Pharisees interpret it. So they are angry with Jesus for having committed this infraction against the Sabbath, and then I don't think I read this yet, but the Pharisees were beside themselves with anger, and they started plotting how they might get even with Jesus. So in some of the other versions of this story, of this event, in the other stories, I think in Mark's especially version of what happened here, he uses a slightly different expression. He says that the Pharisees were looking for a way to destroy Jesus or to kill him. And so we see that quite early on in the stories of Jesus's public life, that the tensions were rising, the divide between the keepers of the old, the traditional, the very rigorous Jewish teachers of the law, the divide between them and Jesus grew strong quite quickly, and to the point where they started to talk amongst themselves, this cannot go on. We have to get rid of this person. He must be destroyed, maybe even killed. And if you know the story of Jesus, you will know that, of course, they succeeded in this trajectory, in this desire to have Jesus killed. So again, what's happening here is that it's being revealed, it's being opened up to us, what Jesus says at the end of chapter 5, where he says the old cannot contain the new. If you try to put the new thing that God is up to through me, if you try to put that, if you try to capture that or press it into the old container, the old wineskins, they will fracture, they'll burst, they will not be able to hold me. And this is exactly what is happening. They cannot hold him. Jesus' ministry continues on. In the next section, we discover that Jesus appoints 12 apostles, 12 disciples. And this is very interesting. I don't know if I should say very much about it right now because it moves on a bit, but maybe just very briefly, that when Jesus appoints 12 close followers to be his apprentices, this harkens back to another thing in the pre-Jesus, the Old Testament part of the Bible, because there we find that at the beginning of the people of God, there are 12 sons of Jacob, and they are the founders, they and their wives obviously, of the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, God's people. So when Jesus is appointing 12 apprentices, it's like he's saying, I'm going back to the beginning, but I'm starting over, to rebuild the people of God, not through the 12 sons of Jacob, but through the 12 apprentices, the 12 disciples who I am authorizing to learn from me and to carry on with my work when my time of service is over. So Jesus' ministry continues. It cannot be contained in the old ways. Something new and terrific, powerful and wonderful is at work. So I think this is an incredible section of Luke's story because it's just filled with the dynamism, the power, the integrity of Jesus, even as a conflict has emerged, tensions are rising, and there are people that hate him and want to do away with him. But nevertheless, Jesus is going to continue on courageously, obediently, and with verve, with energy to do the work of God. So that's it for now. We're, as usual, a little over 10 minutes, so thanks for your patience, and we'll continue on with chapter 6, picking up right after Jesus' appointing of the 12. So till then, be well. Don't forget to subscribe and to like and all that good stuff, and I will see you next time. Be well. Bye-bye.